Voices,
the things they said,
voices,
some from those dead, all the voices heard,
voices,
things we say,
voices,
they're in your head, all the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
Oh, also Shannon.
And Flo.
And no Skylar today, but we wanted to do this very special election-oriented episode. So we're coming at you just like 3 days after our last recording. And we just want to run through the elections with folks real quick today. We're going to start at the state level. First of all, any opening thoughts, folks? Elections, huh?
Yeah, super excited. Can't wait to cast my ballot.
I am so excited for this election to be over.
Yeah, same.
It's a lot.
It feels like it's coming way too soon. Like I feel like we just had to vote for Biden.
Yeah, also that.
Yeah, shit, that's real.
It feels too soon, but also oddly too long. So I'm ready. June 8th, when I wake up and no longer have mailers and campaign responsibilities and all of those things, it would be very nice.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's get started. So, folks, just a couple of disclaimers to start with. We are not covering every single race in our region, nor are we covering necessarily every race, even at the state level. We have way too much ground to cover over the course of an hour. So I know some of y'all running for, education positions, things like that. We're not really touching on that. So apologies on that today. But let's just start from the beginning, start from the highest point and then work our way down. Now, governor, I thought was an interesting race. And today we'd like to use as our points of reference, the Sacramento Sister Circle voter guide, which Flo, you're a part of this, and
yes,
you have worked with them in Buapa for years now doing voter guides, right?
That is correct. We've been doing this for the better part of a decade. And this year we have a new partner in the Social Justice Political PAC, SJ PAC. So shout out to, the team over there. And so we have listed their endorsements in the guide.
Great. And then we are also, obviously, I think a lot of folks in the Sacramento region have come to rely on this voter guide. And there is a sort of a central message to it being that, you're some regular person in Sacramento or the county may not feel like their vote counts, but even if they don't, maybe they take a look at what Black women who they think might represent them as a subset of the community that very often is not represented well.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, the Sacramento Sister Circles guide is recommendations only. With one exception, the Sacramento Sister Circle has never made any endorsements. It offers things up just as voter education, but BWAPA and SJ PAC do offer only endorsements. So those are noted in the guide if you're looking at it.
Yes. And the other reference we're using is the Sacramento hub of the Sunrise Movement. They have not covered every election on their voter guide, but our principle here being that this is a time where we live in a gerontocracy. All of our electeds are older than they ought to be, and they certainly, in a time of severe environmental crisis, don't seem to be representing the needs of a younger class that will be having to live through the legislation that's happening today. So we're doing a focus on them as well today. Let's start with the governor. I very much enjoyed the Sister Circles write-up on this. So why don't we start with that? For governor, I believe they didn't, for the recommendation, they wrote no comment.
Which was that was kind.
Yeah. So walk us through this, Flo.
Well, basically, we acknowledged that we just finished a recall, like what felt like it was just 30 minutes ago. And so the issues that have come up are that just because he survived the recall doesn't mean that he should be off the hook, and that he really needed a dragon. And so that's what he got in here, was a dragging about how he spent the $80 billion surplus last year, and reneged on his promises to address criminal justice, and also just looking at racial equity, and the ways in which he has shirked things. Members of his office have been abusive to sitting members of the legislature, and all of this is really happening because ultimately Gavin wants to run for president in 2024, and so he doesn't want to do anything particularly ambitious. And so we just thought that that was particularly troubling, given that he could actually run the table in California and be the leader that he pretends to be when it's election season.
Yeah, I mean, we are long overdue to have Medicare for all in this state, and he is a big reason that did not make it to the legislative floor to be debated and discussed and voted upon.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's a great endorsement, quote unquote, recommendation. Yeah, and this is one of those races where the Republican Party is completely hobbled after the recall election. They've got no money. So they're even worse off than they usually are in California. So, I mean, you can, if you want, put a protest vote down, but this is one of those situations, as with most state level races, where the Democrat incumbent will in all 99.99% chance win. Personally, I'll be voting for the Peace and Freedom Party member. He's the former poet laureate of LA, I believe the city. Anything else on governor?
Nope.
No.
Well, I just want to, yeah, I'm with you all on that.
Next.
I just I want to rattle off like a few of these things, or not even rattle off. Let's just like blow by some of them. The Lieutenant Governor Eleni is not going to be losing that position. I have issues with her. She and her father put $9 million worth of their real estate money in to get her elected in 2018. She's probably not the best person to represent kind of our lower classes, folks who do deal with the brunt of a capitalist California, but she will win. And this is kind of down the line on most state level races, but there are two races that I think are very important to discuss. One being the exception to the Democrat coasting through rule. That would be the Attorney General race here in the state of California. This is between Democrat Rob Bonta and independent, formerly a Republican, Anne-Marie Schubert. Everyone else in this race isn't really that big of a deal, but Anne-Marie's got a fighting chance. And she's somebody that a lot of conservative sort of 1990s Clinton era tough on crime Democrats really want to win. So Flo, do you want to talk us through this a little bit?
Absolutely. So Rob Bonta was appointed to this position when it became vacant because his predecessor was given the promotion to the national stage by the Biden administration. And so that was Javier Becerra. And so Rob Bonta, stepped in to serve. And so now he is up for election. And what we find about Rob Bonta is that, part of the reason why he's being challenged is because he's being swept up in the sort of, you're being soft on crime, which is actually one of the things that we were kind of knocking him for a little bit in the guide, in terms of just saying like, he's not super progressive or an abolitionist, despite kind of the accusations from his conservative opponents. And he's actually endorsed by the Correctional Peace Officers Association. So this is not the, super progressive person that I think a lot of people are trying to paint him to be. But He also has been, during his time in the legislature, 8 years in the assembly, he focused his attention on retooling the criminal justice system. And he was co-author on some of the bills to try to end cash bail, which did have some problems in terms of implementation, but certainly, the spirit of which I think, many of us would support, and a ban for-profit prisons, and also even some of the investigations into officer-involved killings that he's now overseeing in this role. So he certainly is a vast departure from a name that most Sacramentans will know, Anne Marie Schubert, our local DA, who has, as Dave mentioned, until recently been a Republican, and is, a person who we have seen, really fail to execute in ways that were helpful, had to be kind of harangued to participate in the decriminalization of people who needed record expungements after marijuana was decriminalized in 2016. She, has not really delivered on some of the domestic violence campaign promises that she made, especially not certainly in a way that is equity focused and just, and also, failed to prosecute any of the police officers who have killed people in Sacramento, or for bad behavior. And so we have real problem with her while she was in her current job, and so we do not strongly do not recommend her for a promotion.
Yeah. I mean, in we've talked about her so much on this show.
Yes.
She's not a good person, and she's done very harmful things. And the thing that I never want people to forget is that, not only did she not prosecute the cops that killed Stephon Clark in his grandmother's backyard, the unarmed Black boy, she, a year after they killed him, went on national TV and assassinated his character just one more time for good measure. This is the kind of person she is. I know some folks are going to say like, oh, well, she caught the what was this guy's what?
Golden State Killer?
Golden
No,
State
she
Killer.
didn't.
Shannon, I knew you'd come at me for that.
Surely did not.
DNA.
Yeah, look,
caught the Golden State Killer. It's one of the DNA processing, like the ancestry kind of websites.
Yeah, Shannon,
that's
as the murderino of the show, is there anything else you want to add there?
No, I mean, no. I always want to add that the Shubes is trash in terms of candidacy for anything, actually. But her attempts at taking credit for shit that she just like didn't do, I think is also it's a shining moment for us to see just how incredible this person really is. And by incredible, I mean terrible. She's the worst. Yeah. And let's not
flush Shubes down the tubes.
The Shubes down the tubes. Let's not give this one to I think the Sister Circle even says this. Don't let them put this in the Republican playbook. That you can jump ship on the party and run as an independent and still win. Yep. Because that's garbage.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know a number of Democrats who kind of feel like Republicans around town.
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So, that's an interesting race too. The fact that she is not affiliated with a single party is, to a lot of political consultants, to her detriment, because she does not technically get any party's money. So we'll see. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pans out for her.
She also has a lot of law enforcement support, so she's not doing terribly with her fundraising.
Yeah. And it's one of those, it's a high profile conversation in our country, and people will throw money around from all over the country to different races. So definitely keep an eye on that. But yeah, so for the sake of harm reduction, make sure that Bonta keeps that seat. One more race. And this is another one that's like, if you're a Prague or if you're a socialist, like you kind of don't normally care about something like this. Another harm reduction moment. This would be the insurance commissioner in the state of California. Currently, the incumbent is a man named Ricardo Lara. He ran on sort of like clean up house platform about 4 years ago for this position. This is what does the insurance commissioner do, Flo?
So the insurance commissioner oversees lots of insurance, all the insurance in the state of California, in terms of making sure that the plans are legal and are not, abusing patients or abusing, patrons, I guess, for your car insurance and for your homeowner's insurance and for all of those other insurances that you have in your life. So they're overseeing all of them. And for this role, you want somebody who, similar to a candidate we'll talk about later, who's previously served in this role. You want somebody who's going to at least say, I'm not going to take their money, and I'm not going to allow that to be able to like influence how I do my job.
Simple.
That should be like
very small.
The bar is so low,
yeah.
right, that you should easily be able to meet it, clear it, and he has not been able to clear it, unfortunately. And so he took insurance industry money during the campaign, which is it should be an obvious thing not to do, and honestly for decades it had been the way we handled things, which is why I'm always so surprised that we make a big deal about not taking police money when you oversee them, because other industries, kind of have this for elections as a no-brainer,
right. But
he did not think it was a no-brainer. And so he broke with that tradition. And then he apologized, swore he'd give it back, and then took more money. So, and then he said he won't allow it to change his behavior, but then he got caught being involved in some clear conflicts of interest.
Ricardo. Didn't he take Beyonce tickets?
And we love Mother more than anybody, but listen, you come on, from a gas company, right? Like, this is just not okay. Yeah. So his opponent is someone who, the Sister Circle guide talked about, as somebody that we're hoping that at least is going to depart in this way, has not taken money, has championed transparency, and actually has a track record of kind of coming up against business on a few occasions, and even opposed the gun lobby when the Democrats and the Democratic-backed bailout of PG&E. So we've seen, Mark kind of show up and take the difficult positions that don't just align with the statewide party. And so we're hoping that he won't hit us with, as we mentioned in the guide, the new phone who dis as soon as he gets elected, and actually will continue to be the candidate that thus far he's been, and the way he served in other capacities.
Great. We are trucking along. I'm proud of us.
Super proud.
Let's keep it rolling.
Trying to get to that local bit.
But yeah, you got to get Ricardo out of this seat. Yeah. Let's move on. As far as the national level Senate or House of Representatives, we're not going to dive into that today. I think it's obvious Padilla wins this, the Senate seat, which he was appointed into by the governor. The House, locally, we've got Doris. It's just, you can't knock down a pillar like that, as much as I would like to have a younger, fresher, person who has fresh new ideas and really, really cares about, the interests of younger folks. I don't think that's happening this year. Any thoughts there before I move on?
No, I think you're spot on about that.
And then, so let's dive into the state of California's legislature. We'll start with the Senate. I believe it's District 6. This is up in sort of this is around the Roseville area, right? So it's a little bit more conservative. I think it's like a Republican +2 district, possibly. and this is a race between a guy, Roger Nielo, who's like a car salesman up there. We've all
Yes.
seen the car lot.
You will see his name on the license plate frames.
Yes, he is the Republican running for office, and he is running against what's her name, Paula
Vasquez.
Yes, and she being the Democrat. This is one that both the Sister Circle and the folks with the Sunrise Movement have gone with her. Kind of straightforward, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you don't want the Republican to win. I don't know much about her beyond that, though.
It's just like the common thread throughout.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, there being some evidence that she would be better than just not a Republican, so we're hoping that helps. I mean, again, how these campaign promises turn into actual, governance is always a question, but
Exactly,
there seem to be some things, especially for some of the hot topics of the day, criminal justice, housing, overall reproductive justice and health access. I mean, those seem to be things that she's supportive of. So
yeah, and it's one of those things that I apologize, viewers and listeners, I haven't dove into the campaign finance on a race like that because that doesn't interest me as much necessarily. And I'm sorry, but that's true. But she has spoken to police accountability. That doesn't mean that she's an abolitionist. It doesn't mean that she would, take the pledge not to take cop money. But she has spoken up on that. She's also spoken up, as Flo said, on housing issues and is championing women's reproductive rights, which that one's been thrust back into the public sphere the last month or so. Let's move on to District 8. This is an interesting one.
Yeah.
There's a few folks running in this one. I think there's, 4 main candidates?
Yes. And so this is the top 2 race. So
Yes.
the top 2 will carry over to November. And so I know that was a key consideration when time was of the essence for the Sister Circle guide of we likely will do a deeper treatment on this in the fall.
Yeah. And somebody could win outright, right? If they get over 50.
Yeah, we think that's very unlikely though. So
okay.
Just because of the number of candidates.
Yeah. So this is against it's got, who's in this? It's Dave Jones and Angelique Ashby, right?
Mm-hmm. Those are kind of the front runners.
But there is at least one other person. Isn't there a pastor?
Oh yes. Wait, no. For this race?
Sorry, let's see.
I was like, I know there's a pastor in another race, but I don't.
All right,
I
let's
could be
see
wrong.
here. This is Assembly District 8. All right. Nope, it's coming up weird for me. Because we are in a year where we have new maps, and so Ballotpedia continues to confuse me. But the 2 main ones, let's just say this, are Dave Jones and Angelique Ashby. These are very well-known politicians within the Sacramento region. And I don't even know where to start with this one. Should we just read? Can we just read the Sister Circle's write-up on this? If anyone wants to do it, I'm happy to if no one wants to.
Sure, you can.
All right. Well, I feel weird now being the one who is the voice of the Sister Circle, but
I kind of like it though.
all right, I'll do it. I hope there's nothing that's gonna make me sound like a moron. All right.
Oh, we can only hope.
So Dave Jones against Angelique Ashby, right? Here's what they write up. Dave Jones is a former California insurance commissioner. This was from 2011 to 2019. state assembly member from 2004 to 2010, and Sacramento City Council member 1999 to 2004. He has a clear record of accountability and will hold corporations like oil and gas, pharma, hospitals, and Amazon to a high standard. Dave Jones is committed to advancing social justice and equity. While he was insurance commissioner, he defended contraception coverage under the Affordable Care Act. He is a proven progressive champion and will fight for working families in the Senate. Here's the fun part. This is what I've been dying to just hear read out loud. His opponent is Angelique Ashby, and it is a hell no for us. Her record locally on homelessness, issues affecting women who aren't white and middle class, like childcare and livable wages, and promoting the actual safety of the public is 12 years of face palms. She has teamed up with the big polluters and the police to be a spoiler in this race. Angelique is a conservative masquerading as, never mind, it isn't a secret. Now, I don't know who wrote this. But it just felt familiar to me, you know, something felt just resonated.
Could it be a doctor?
It really,
there were several that helped out with this guide, so you might be onto something.
It must be a doctor because Angelique got the treatment. So, let's talk about her first. These 12 years of face palms, you know, a lot of people, especially if you're just tuning into politics in the last year or so, you might see her and be like, oh no, what a nice strong leader, like, you know, and very family oriented, and like she seems progressive. What are you talking about? What are we talking about?
We're talking about all of the things that Angelique does. We're talking about her being the face of the police department. We're talking about her being actively antagonistic on issues related to homelessness that Shannon can detail in even greater, you know, specificity than I can. We're talking about her, you know, showing up in ways that are always to spoil by making it seem as if, like, undermining some of the violence prevention efforts and things like that, always making it seem as if she's really thinking about how we can support local businesses, but it's really just a way to be able to avoid actually taking any steps towards, you know, addressing some of the issues that are happening, especially things like, you know, when it comes to police violence, when it comes to community violence, and is always trying to kind of champion, you know, pay wage issues and racial equity, but then votes against some of the things that would actually, you know, meaningfully be able to provide livable wage jobs to people, and to be able to back paid family leave, and, you know, and childcare and those kind of things that are needed, and that are, you know, both race and class issues. And so Angelique has shown herself not to be particularly useful on this front if you care about those issues. And so I see no reason, the guide shares that view, that there's no reason to give her a promotion.
Shannon, any thoughts on Angelique, at least, you know, through the lens of a expert on house needs?
I mean, I think that Ashby has proven time and time again to center the needs, the desires of capital more than those of people. I think one of the most frustrating things when it comes to the way that she conducts herself in areas around issues of homelessness is that she's so focused on a very specific kind of homelessness, which is the kind that is easy to sell as like fixable, right? Like she won't, it's like families. It's the women and children who are not struggling necessarily with alcohol or other drug, not living with addiction, or not living with like severe mental health, or, you know, when there's not a lot of her favorite thing is getting in there and making sure to like fix those issues on people with the least amount of barriers, right? And we've seen her on the city council make decisions around homelessness that really strip some potentially like good-ish plans of their viability, because she ends up leaning toward more punitive measures.
Right.
And that's what happens when police give you a lot of fucking money, right?
Mhm.
Like, you're always going to side with them when you have developers who are giving you money. I mean, you're always going to keep their
Property
interests.
over people as far as
Yes.
someone like her goes.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Without
Yeah.
question.
So we'll
and-
see. I mean, what she's doing is she's centering people who look like her, and in a space as diverse as Sacramento, that's not actually what we need, I don't think.
Yeah.
Are we being misogynist by supporting the white man over her?
Absolutely not. I don't care. Like, to me, this is the issues, like, period. Like, Angelique is not standing up for, the women that I know and love. And Dave Jones is in really meaningful ways. So for me, this is a job, and this is not social promotion, because you've been around long enough, and so it's your turn. And we don't just go in here and say, well, what do you identify as? Great, that's enough. We say, what are you saying you were going to do? What does your track record show us you care about? And that's how we decide whether or not you are the person who should get the job. And Dave Jones he has even, had conversations about how he, earlier in his career, he did take police money, and he doesn't anymore, because he learned. And when he learned
That's
better,
good.
he did
Yeah.
better, right? And so
Yeah.
I think those are the things that we should be looking for. Is, I never require perfection of anyone. And I think that's a really tall, order for anybody to meet. But I do want to see people who are being thoughtful. I do want to see people who are, really taking some of the issues that I care about to task. And I have not yet seen Angelique do that in any meaningful way. And she's had 12 years.
Yeah. And like, full disclosure as well, like, obviously I'm friends with a lot of people who support Dave Jones. Flo, I think you've publicly supported him already.
Yes, I have publicly supported Dave Jones.
And he is hands down the most progressive candidate in this race. That's just all it is. He's got an astounding a lot of endorsements. I believe the Bee even endorsed him. So he's got a long track record, and no matter what Steve Maviglio tries to tell you on Twitter, you're not doing a misogyny if you support Dave Jones.
That is a reductionist argument, Steve, and I expect it from you. Stop it.
Yeah, why are we surprised?
Somebody else was saying that because, I don't know, somebody tweeted something about how Big Oil is putting out mailers in favor of Angelique, which is true. But then after somebody pointed that out, then they got accused of, being misogynistic. And I just don't know how that fits into a race like this.
I wish the Pink Pussy Hat Brigade would go away. I really do.
Right.
Just go away already. Like, I'm tired of it, because this is really, that's what it boils down to. It's like, it's a very biological and reductionist argument of just like, she identifies as a woman, and therefore we support her. And if you don't, you've done something wrong. And that's like saying, oh, if you support the candidate who is Black or Indigenous or, another person of color, that, that is the, equity or the racial equity champion. It's like, have you met Candace Owens? Have you met like self-hating people have you met Ted Cruz? Like, nobody would describe him, as a Latino, or Marco Rubio as like Latino champions, right? Like, come on, like we can think better than just doing identity politics. Because there actually are identity politics, and they're not just what do you identify as, but how do you champion the issues of people who, have those identities and at those intersections.
Anything else we want to say about this race?
No.
All right. We spent a little more time on that, but that's a fun race, so I'm glad we did. Let's move on to the assembly, state assembly. I want to blow through this as best we can. Kevin McCarty, what's that? District 6. He doesn't lose that. I have a number of friends who are homeless advocates who are really disappointed in him and his
Same.
championing this violent legislation that will, what is it? It's about like being able to clear out parks.
We want to save the crown jewel of Sacramento, and
Yeah.
people cannot sleep there. So get out.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
I just don't understand. Yeah. He has historically been pretty good on
Yes.
progressive issues, and this
There are a
was
few that he
painful to
struggles
see.
with. Yeah, there are a few that he struggles with, and this is one of them. And that the guide kind of pointed that out, while also, just coming from the perspective of Black women. Like, he also has supported Black women in some of the races that have taken place in really meaningful ways, like progressive Black women. And so we wanted to also honor the full track record, but also say he needs a progressive push on housing issues, and that was really stated. And I think we should hold him to task for that.
Yeah. I mean, he's in the Black Caucus. He has pushed forward legislation that could really save lives as far as police accountability goes. Like,
Right.
he has done good stuff. It just sucks to see this one,
Yeah.
I think we find like this really is an election cycle that finds us in a space of having to sort of take pause on where people find themselves in on the spectrum, I guess, of supporting people experiencing homelessness or like criminalizing them, right? Like especially here in Sacramento. So it's something that I'm always tuned to, but even more so this time around.
Yeah. Totally. And it's getting more complex these days because most people are blue, and so it's like that's not an indicator of where you'll land on some really important issues.
Right.
Let's move on. District 7, I believe Sister Circle gave a sigh and said, okay, Ken Cooley. Was that it?
A deep sigh and an eye roll.
And an eye roll. Don't forget the eye roll. It was,
problematic dude, moderate, but he will probably be running against Republicans, right, in this seat. So yeah. I think are there some women's reproductive rights things that he has some issues with?
And there are a couple of things that came up for him, particularly around like him not always being on board when when he needs to, or pulling out when we didn't want him to. And I don't know, his district as well in terms of, but he definitely has an F score with the California Courage campaign, because he just basically departed, on criminal justice and environmental protection and racial justice bill. So
it's a district that gets bluer every year too. Like it's a swing district still, but like the people there deserve better, and sooner or later could probably vote him out if he doesn't turn around.
Yeah.
District 8, no, sorry, we already touched on that, was the Senate. District 10. This is a interesting race. Flo, do you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, this one used to be Jim Cooper's seat. It used to be District 9, but it's a new seat now. So, and it doesn't include that same boundary. So, Galt and Lodi got dropped, and now it includes Vineyard and Fruit Ridge, which is how Eric Guerra is now in this district. And so there are actually 5 candidates in this
current city council member of District 6?
Yes, of District 6. That's correct. And so there are 4 Democrats, 1 Republican in the race. It seems the top 3 are Eric Guerra, current city council member, Stephanie Nguyen, the current Elk Grove city councilwoman, and a community member and pastor, Takoi Porter.
That's who I was thinking of earlier. There he is.
Yes, that's why I was like, I
found
think
him.
that I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, this is interesting because both Eric and Takoi were running for the Dave Jones Angelique seat before, and then this one opened up, and so they jumped over here instead of doing state senate. They decided to try assembly. It's really an interesting race. Eric works in the legislature as well. A lot of people know him as a council member, but that's his day job because just for the record, city council member in Sacramento is not a full-time job. So many of them also have other full-time other work that they do. This race brings in, Stephanie Nguyen. There's a lot of controversy, I think, that's happened in Elk Grove. And she's also backed by Jim Cooper, which is never a good look because we can talk about Jim Cooper.
Hardcore conservative
Yes.
Democrat, yeah.
Exactly. Takoi is really active in the community, and he has some support from like the Fortune schools, and but the challenge here, we'll talk about this I think a couple of times, is just being very green on policy matters. And the approach and just understanding how things work and what he actually wants to get done feels a little bit vague and fuzzy. And so for this race, the recommendation ended up being Eric Guerra. He has traditionally been aligned with the mayor, but he also has departed and kind of spoken up and been a champion at time, supporting some of the working poor and small business. And so there was a thinking that of the available candidates, he was probably the one to recommend. But recognizing also that, all the issues that we've had on city council, we haven't seen him be a hard, no. He was anti-rent control, some of the things that we really care about. And so this is a really challenging race as well, but certainly not one that we want to overlook or, hand over to someone who could really do more damage both locally and at the state because of preemption.
We gotta keep moving, but that's a really good description. Shannon, I've been thinking that if Eric Guerra does get this seat, that seems to open up a District 6 city council seat. Who do you think we should try and get in there?
I was thinking that it would be cool, given this pandemic and stuff. It would be nice to have someone who understands infectious disease and
public health.
Public health would be and I don't know, someone who is well connected and really respected in the community,
widely thought of positively.
Understands budgets and I don't know. So we should probably just be thinking about who that person can be.
Who knows? Yeah. Moving on, let's get to the county level stuff. Sheriff, this is a race between Jim Cooper, who's a wildly problematic Democrat, and Jim Barnes. It's the battle of the Jims, and Barnes being the handpicked man to come behind Sheriff Scott Jones. Now, where do we land here?
Well,
do we have to land?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we do eventually have to. The Sister Circle did not. We just kind of laid out how bad this is, because Jim Cooper really is a cartoon villain. We talked about him so much on the show, but he is so problematic. And we really just had to say he's a hell no. The longer he's in office, the more egregious his voting record is, and it just really is a big problem. And he has been so pro law enforcement in the most problematic way possible. And not that position in and of itself isn't a really challenging one to have, but he's somehow managed to make it just like, I will be problematically pro law enforcement in every way possible. And he also just, in addition to that, has been just a really terrible person when it comes to, allegations of misconduct, and just being, abusive in the community in his former police work. So that's a big hell no. And then Jim Barnes is a Trump supporting Republican. And so that's just like, he seems to not have some bad ideas all the time, but he's not a trustworthy person. So it's really just not.
I fall along the voting line of NorCal Resist on this one. I don't know if you saw that, but they have officially endorsed no one, and then they had like a picture of a kitten, and under the kitten said ACAB. All cats are beautiful, of course. So I thought that was a beautiful endorsement. I learned on that line. District Attorney of Sacramento County. This is a very important one. We all know where we land on this. We had Alana Matthews on the show to discuss her work. God, this was ages ago. She's a friend of the show, and she is going up against Tien Ho, who is the hand-picked predecessor for the monstrous Anne-Marie Schubert, who is running for Attorney General of the state. This is pretty straightforward, but any thoughts on this?
I think it's worth mentioning because people will say, when we talk about district attorney and abolition and what are we doing, like, district attorney is the problematic nature of voting for district attorney. I think we have to acknowledge that the system is totally fucked, right? And so we're not going to be able to fix all of the systemic issues that exist in the carceral, punitive system that does exist. But if we're going to elect someone into the position of district attorney, we want someone who understands where things are fucked up, where they can come in and work through a justice lens, and be strategic around that. And I think that, there's been so many people, so many incredibly well-respected people, abolitionists, folks who recommend Alana Matthews because she can get in there, understand, she understands the issues, she acknowledges the problematic nature of a position like this, and is committed to making changes with the power that she could potentially be given. So just acknowledging sort of like the weird space that it puts us in as people who are into getting rid of the carceral system as we know it.
That's been a regular conversation in abolitionist circles, I think, in our county. And it's one of those things too, where it gets a little, emotions get a little high, but I don't think they have to. I don't think it's so okay. I don't know, obviously I don't think police or a carceral system should exist, but I would put her sign in my window, right? I talk to friends about her because she is a much better person to elect than Tien. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting conversation.
I have her sign in my front yard, and as someone who is an abolitionist would gladly have the conversation about why she is a great choice, and about why her opponent, who works for the current district attorney, is maybe not the best person to bubble in that vote for.
And I am in agreement with everything that's been said. I also, full disclosure, have very vociferously supported Alana Matthews and have been actually encouraging her to run for something for quite some time. And so I am a direct contributor to her campaign, an indirect contributor to her campaign, and an in-kind contributor to her campaign, given that it is currently headquartered in my home. So, yeah.
Thought that was your backyard.
It's interesting that if you talk to someone like over long periods of time and knowing them and like talk to them about maybe running for office, that like they end up sometimes they end up doing it. So we should just sort of keep that in mind.
That's true. That's true,
moving
folks.
forward.
Yeah, let's think about that for District 6 even.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow, we're running low on time. We got to move. So Board of Soups, let's blow through this real quick. There are 3 seats that are up for election. District 1, Phil Cerna. Lamentably, the man is running unopposed. Yes, he's been considered one of the most progressive people on the Board of Soups, but that is an incredibly, horrifically, devastatingly low bar.
Yeah.
And it would have been nice, I think, to see somebody sort of challenge him in earnest on the left.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I think Phil Cerna's style of leadership tends to be reactive or responsive to the issues that come before him. Like he is someone who definitely, I mean, in my work life, he is someone who has been responsive to advocacy work, but I think we really need someone who is ahead of that and has folks who are sort of like have their finger on the pulse and can be proactive. Also, you know, let's not forget that Phil Cerna was in his current seat during the Nav Gill shit show. So
it's a former CEO of the county who, as it turned out, had a very toxic sort of work culture and misogynistic.
And also just blew the CARES Act money and people actually died and were injured because of it.
And tried to give it all to the sheriff's department.
Correct.
Okay. So yes. And this is, so that's, you know, that's damning on everyone who was on the county Board of Soups, you know, during this 2 years ago. District 2, this is Patrick Kennedy's seat. Patrick Kennedy is the other one who's considered quote unquote progressive on the Board of Soups. Again, a very low bar. He is running against a young man named Duke Cooney. I think really what people want to see is in our circles is Duke is the guy to go with. He's a young Black man. He would be the first young gay Black man to be on the Board of Soups. And I think he would bring a much needed perspective generally.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, Supervisor Kennedy is somebody who has, you know, he's maintained that sort of like progressive label throughout the time that he's been in his seat. But I think that like some fresher eyes and somebody who is really interested in centering equity work is really necessary on the Board of Supervisors. And it does seem like Duke Cooney is bringing that seasoning to the dais.
Yes, I kind of lament it. Like I feel like we should have had Duke on our show at some point, but we just didn't get around to it.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
Anything else to add here? All right,
no,
D5.
Who's running for D5?
This is a very interesting race. This is Jacqueline Moreno, who's running as a Democrat, Pat Hume running as a Republican, and Steve Lee. Did I pronounce that correctly? Who's formerly a Democrat, but he had a very public breakup letter with the Democrats. So I believe he's running as an independent. Lee being from, again, the Elk Grove area. Elk Grove is like the Real Housewives of politics.
Yes.
if you're from there, like, you know, I don't live there. I'm not into the day-to-day of it, but it's like, it's an intense place. And a lot of these folks are bringing the history with them on the seats that they're running for. It seems to me that the folks to the left are hoping to have Jacqueline win this seat. This is formerly Don Natoli's seat. He is just like sorry, Don, if you listen, but like a snooze fest of a Democrat that like didn't really do much of anything.
He's been in that seat for so long.
That's actually it's like over 25 years, and that's actually the only job he's really ever had, because like he worked in the office before he ran for that
is
seat.
Amazing.
So this is like, he is career District 5, and so the seat has not been open to anybody else in, you know, over a generation. So this is actually a really interesting race, because it's the first time that it hasn't had an incumbent since, you know, most of the Sunrise Movement was born.
Jacqueline seems to be the move. Flo, do you know why that is? I know that she got a soft nod from the sister circle, and I believe Sunrise went with her as well.
Yes. You know, Jacqueline, again, of the available candidates, seems to be the one who has the kind of, you know, leg up. She certainly is more middle of the road than Duke is. I would probably describe her as maybe being somewhere around the Patrick Kennedy or Phil Cerna kind of, you know, somewhere between those two. I think the major thing here is that she has worked on the Commission for Women and Girls, I believe is the official name, and has done some you know, decent work there in terms of championing some of those issues. She has not, to my knowledge, taken any law enforcement money, although because of the district, I think hasn't been maybe as loud about that as we would like. So no signing of pledges and things like that. But to my knowledge, it has not happened. And so there are some signals that she's both trying to be electable, but also trying to hold on to some important values. And so it gives us, I think, a little bit of hope that maybe this is signaling for a change in the right direction, because we recognize that her district is not exactly District 1 like Phil Cerna's, where signing the pledge could actually allow some, you know, some of her opponents on the Democratic side to squeeze in and get some swing votes. So, but also not taking the money is actually the more important thing than whether or not you know, sign a pledge to say you're not going to. So those are the kinds of things that that, you know, we were looking at and considering when we were thinking about her candidacy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's move on to the city. We're just going to have to take a little extra time, I think, today. But I do want to touch on every one of these races. District 1, we have the two main folks are Lisa Kaplan running against Nate Pelzar. I was surprised by this one. I was surprised that so I know Sunrise didn't go with anyone, and Sister Circle went with Kaplan.
Yeah, and you know, there's even been additional information I think that has been shared, you know, about whether or not this should have included some eye rolls and some size and some other things. But
it was a soft endorsement. Yeah,
it was a very soft endorsement, or a very soft recommendation. It was not actually an endorsement.
Thank you.
And yeah, so I mean, you know, I've heard some really disturbing things, especially as it relates to, you know, abuse of and some union things that have come up with Lisa Kaplan. She, you know, has also, you know, based on some of the kind of insider, you know, knowledge, done some work to at least try to state some values and certainly, you know, listen to Black women when they've reached out to her. There was, of course, a question about whether or not this was performative. And then, like I said, some of the other things that have come up, especially around some of her engagement with Black women in the community, have been a little more troubling to me. So I am personally glad that I don't live in this district and have to actually cast a ballot. But she does mention, you know, like some of the issues in ways that make it, questionable where she'll fall. I don't think she'd be a strong champion here, but there were some questions about, whether or not, given her, her desire to address some of the housing and homelessness and public safety and economic recovery, that she could be a nice addition, or the best addition, I guess, of the available options. So soft
Yeah.
recommendation.
It's I don't envy District 1 residents. So let me just run through a couple of, because I went through just like right before we started recording some of the places that candidates were getting their money from. I didn't catch everything, but you do get a good picture of who is the anti-rent control candidate and who is the pro-cop candidate. And often that's the same candidate, but too often we're seeing it's each one is one or the other here in city council races. So you're fucked if you do and you're fucked if you don't.
Yeah.
Lisa is the real estate candidate.
Yep.
She has taken $6,000 from CREPAC, that's the Real Estate Political Action Committee, $6,000 from the California Apartments Association, $1,800 from Californians for a Growing Economy. This is another one of those like AstroTurf right-wing groups that tries to use a progressive name. She took $1,800 from developer Sotiris Kolakatranis, $1,800 from LDKV Management, another developer, $6,000 from the Metro Chamber, $1,000 from Steve Hansen in his mayor for 2024 purse. All things that concern me. She's got the big money behind her. I feel like she might win. To me, what is really disqualifying, which obviously to me is like a total lefty, and it won't be disqualifying to other people, but she was on the Natomas Unified School District Board that unanimously voted to side with the far right propaganda machine, Project Veritas, and fire someone who I consider a friend, Gabe Geip. And to me, that's just unconscionable. But here, here is who she's running against, Nate Pelzar. I think he's kind of running a little bit behind with a little bit of a leaner campaign. He's got Ashby supporting him, which immediately kind of like raises a flag for me.
Totally. Yeah.
Because Ashby, if you've been watching city council for this long, his platform includes trying to carry on her legacy. And it's like, man, which part of that, right? And so, yeah, her campaign gave him $1,800. Actually, the same developer, Sotiris Kolakatranis, gave him also $1,800. Sotiris,
they're like, listen, we'll take either of you.
Playing every side.
Yeah.
And then of course the real kicker here, the cops gave him $6,000. So I just don't envy District 1 to echo Flo.
Yeah.
Anything else here? Should I move on to D3?
Let's get to D3.
District 3, another tough one. This time, like, they're more likable than the District 1 candidates, each of them.
Really?
They both have the same issues.
Yeah.
And again, it's a problem. So we have Michael Lynch running against Karina Talamantes. Michael Lynch he runs a nonprofit that is dedicated to helping Black youth?
It's I think it's boys and men of color.
Okay.
And improve your tomorrow.
That's
so
what
going
it is,
from high school through college. Yeah.
And he is also a former NELPer. So Flo and I were in the NELP fellowship. So we know him either here or there. I've only met him maybe once. I proctored actually his selection day for you NELPers out there. And then like we have Karina Talamantes, who is she was the chief of staff for Angelique Ashby.
Oh, she's I mean, she
It
still
still
is.
is. Yeah. Another, again, listen, folks, if you listen to the show, you know how we feel about Angelique. That's a flag for us.
Yeah.
I've met
Also
Karina.
wants
I
to
think
carry
she's
the legacy.
also wants to carry the legacy.
Yes.
I also think she's very nice, but like, you know, similar concerns, right? Let me just throw down the money of who's going to whom in their district. Mike is the developer candidate. He has taken 6,000 from the California Apartment Association, 6,000 from CREPAC, $250 from Chris Evans. That's the superintendent of Natomas Unified. You know how I feel about that. 1,800 from developer Mark Friedman, 1,800 from LDKV Management Inc. And $5,501.52 for some reason from the Metro Chamber. I don't know what that's about. But he did take 500 from Dr. Weber, who is Flo's spirit animal. So like he's super problematic in taking the anti-renters rights money, but there are many pillars in the Black community that are throwing down for his campaign. Karina, she has obviously Angelique's campaign gave her 1,800. She got 1,800 from Capital Casino, 1,800 from Samantha Corbin, who's a big player in politics locally, 500 from Heather Fargo, former mayor of Sacramento, 1,000 from Sotiris. We see you, Sotiris, you're everywhere. And then like she got a little bit from Mai and Katie, who are the most progressive like members on city council. But then she also got 250 from Steve Maviglio. So like there are some,
gross.
I know. But the biggest one, guess what? Wherein Michael is the developer and landlord candidate. She is the cop candidate. She took $6,000 from the cops. So for me, if I live in this district, I gotta plug my nose and pick one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a rough
District
ride.
1 and District 3, both tough, right? Tough. I mean, I'm glad I don't live in either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll just leave it there. Because I don't want to have to make a choice if I don't have to, and I don't have to.
Yeah.
Let's go to District 5. Now, District 5, this is Katie Maple.
My former
who's
district.
been sorry?
My former district.
Your former district, yes, and Flo's former district. You both.
Yes.
Flo moved out. Shannon got pushed out by redistricting.
Yeah.
I mean,
Rude.
I got pushed out by home prices, so you know, same thing.
So speaking of home price, well, Katie Maple moved in within the last couple years to a home.
Housing.
And she actually like manages one of the community fridges over there, which I like. She is running against Tamiko Heim, who I believe is a longtime resident of D5. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now there's a few things here going on, right? Flo, why don't you lay out this district? Because I feel like you know this district very well.
Yeah. So, you know, this district includes historic Oak Park, which is, you know, kind of the crown jewel of District 5, and also the place where I think the politics get hotly contested because it's a historically Black district that is being rapidly gentrified and has a lot of attention from the city because UC Davis and Aggie Square and, you know, the changes in North Oak Park in particular, especially along the Broadway corridor. And so there's just been a lot of, you know, really rapid change in this community and a big impact on the people who live there. And so, you know, Jay Chenier has represented this district prior to redistricting, which did change the map a little bit, but for, I believe, the last 12 years. And so it's the first time that there hasn't been an incumbent, you know, in over a decade as well. And so we have two candidates, you know, there are three candidates total, but two of the you know, more prominent candidates that are running. And you know, the Sister Circle Guide made no recommendation in part because, you know, there was just some real, you know, challenges there.
Yeah.
And, I think we described it as like Katie really does have, all the right talking points. But there are just a couple of things that were really like still rubbing everyone kind of wrong. I know we've talked about some of them here. And there was actually some really deep conversation about whether or not to support Tomiko. Tomiko then, of course, had decided to take the police money and was, quoted in the Bee as, saying really directly, like, I don't support decreasing the police budget and I'm in favor of increasing it, which just wanting to be clear, like, and some of the other candidates who were recommended or not, we have, there are additional considerations. The Sister Circle voter guide, at least I can say, is written by a lot of different people. So that's why the tone kind of changes and like how hard or soft people are on different things changes. But one of the key considerations here, was we have not seen any of the other candidates, even some of the ones that we spoke out really actively against say things like, I'm not in favor of declining a budget of this particular, like even the candidates who have taken or not taken other police money in other races have not said that. So that was really concerning because it's an upfront commitment from someone who's also taken money from that. And so that was really a kind of a non-starter. And of course, with Katie, some of the issues are, the endorsement, especially of Angelique, and just the questioning overall of the timing of her arrival in the district, of the role she's played in it, representing it before really like living in and getting to know it, and just some of the concerns that have happened, in terms of especially white savior syndrome, and just kind of showing up and being like, I know what all you people need to do. And so just giving a lot of folks the cringe factor. And so she sounds right. I mean, Katie has done and said all of the right progressive things, but there's just something about showing up in a district and immediately deciding to be its representative that has almost never worked out well for especially, Black women.
I think it's important. I don't want to like gloss over too quickly the Ashby endorsement, because I think we got dragged for that a little bit the last time we talked about it. And to be clear, and maybe this isn't like a universal understanding of what an endorsement is, but I think that like for us, when we think about an endorsement, what that means is that you're saying that you believe that that person can represent well the community and make policy decisions on behalf of that community. So you're saying that an endorsement equals saying, that you have someone who can, who's going to amplify voices and center the people in the community that they represent, right? And Katie Maple claims to stand for all of the things that actually like sound really good, right? And I think
really good.
She's done some incredible work, and credit where credit's due. But when you put your name on an endorsement, I don't know if we
even mentioned Sac Soup. Like that's
right. Sac Soup, which is that's outreach and direct service to people experiencing homelessness, and that was created during the pandemic as a response to the lack of services that exist in our community. So she's done some incredible work and says that she cares about all these things, and certainly like I have no reason not to believe her, except that then she endorses somebody like Angelique Ashby, who does the exact opposite of what Katie Maple says, is important to her. And, it is problematic, and people will get upset with us and will probably get dragged again on Twitter for this, but where you put your endorsement matters. And that is a reflection of your own values. And so if you're saying one thing that sounds real tight, to people who find themselves on left of center, I don't want to misuse that, like to progressives and leftists, you can't then endorse a candidate who is like basically a Republican and feel like we're just going to say, well, yeah, we still 100% trust you to do the work. It just doesn't work that way.
I
also take issue when white women, Flo mentioned the white savior thing that comes in, and how do you use your position of privilege? Find, the woman of color in your community that you can amplify and support. And because those women exist, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like moving in and immediately deciding to try to represent your district. And I've seen, I've followed Katie on her socials, and she does seem to be getting out there and doing the work and getting to know her neighbors, but they just became her neighbors,
Yeah.
Yeah, within the last couple years.
Yeah.
I think that if Katie Maple is the next representative of that district, I think she functions more like a Mai Vang.
Sure.
More relationship oriented and less principle and political ideologically oriented, like the person that I like the most on city council, right? Katie Valenzuela, I think, really runs on everything she does on principle. I think like reading the sister circle thing, I was like, yeah, I get that generally. And like, I think I have just general blind spots on representation, right? Like I'm a white dude, like I'm going to what has kind of pushed me closer to the Maple camp. And this is even like with the Pussy Hat Brigade coming after me months ago, like the money that's gone into Tomiko's campaign, it's
Yes.
incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It's an
Yeah.
incredible amount of dollars from the real estate, from the landlords, from the cops, and from the Metro Chamber. And as the person, like I started the SAC Follows the Money because I think this is really, really important. And I think that I personally believe that the folks we vote into office will represent more the people who've given them money than they will the people who gave them that one vote. And that to me, like, I mean, she got, do I have any of it in front of me?
It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of, it's
yeah,
$6,000 or something from
and you look
the
at
cops.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Independent expenditures too. That's when you start seeing the money really flying at her. She had $25,000 to the Alliance to Support the Middle Class. This is the real estate and landlords that they're doing like calls and mailers for her. They, by the way, did 8,000 in that time frame for Michael Lynch. And then I saw the Metro Chamber giving her $25,000. Yeah, $25,000 like 4 or 5 days ago.
And she's been very honest. She's like, campaigns are expensive. So like when you say that in the B, you make yourself right for the taking in terms of people just wanting to show up and buy your vote, right?
Yeah.
Because it seems like that's what you're saying. It's like campaigns are expensive. So if you want to give me money, you should. And it's deeply concerning.
So I basically just am sharing, like, that's where at the end of all of this, I do lean to Katie at this point.
And
totally.
this one said, that's why it was like, the candidate with the perfect talking points, right? Like there was no recommendation made, but we kind of laid out like where everybody laid on the issues in hopes that people will make their best decision. But that's really what it boils down to, is like, if Katie is who she claims to be in this, in this campaign, she is the better candidate. But that also, there's a part of me that makes sad because it's Oak Park. Because I grew up in an Oak Park type of neighborhood in Pittsburgh, the Hill District, where August Wilson wrote his Century series. And it's a neighborhood that really matters to me. And so when I see people, kind of, coming in and, and representing it without really bolstering and being able to make good of what's already there. It's like kind of the like run girl run, and it's like, yeah, but like also think about like, is that the role you need to play here? And it just kind of, I mean, to me, it felt a little bit like, oh shoot, Katie Valenzuela already got the Central City. All right, what else is right for the picking? And I'm like, D7 is still sitting out there.
Please, please, somebody
I'm just
D7,
like,
please.
I'm just like, come
Move
on,
to
like,
pocket.
right? Like I was like, Sean Malloy doesn't even, live here according to the rumors. So like, like I'm just saying, like, it just, I don't know. Oak Park is always going to have, people are going to feel a way about it because it's Oak Park. And
That's 100% legit. Yeah.
And I will say, in the spirit of credit where credit's due, Katie Maple has all over her socials said, like, I'm here to talk, to answer questions, to, like, if there's anything that you don't feel 100% about in terms of like my candidacy, please reach out. And I think that is, that's what I think this conversation sort of highlights, where there are issues with both candidates. And if you find yourself trying to figure out which of the two, and Tomiko taking cop money isn't enough, then, reaching out and starting that conversation with Katie, I think that she seems to be very open to it. So,
ask her about renters' rights. Why do you think the Metro
Right.
Chamber is coming at her so hard, throwing so much money against her? She's landing on some of these issues, right? So
totally.
Yeah.
Well, let's see how this.
She seems to be right on all of the, like, I'm, gotta say, like, she's the person who in this race has, said the right things and for the right reasons. Her talking points are pitch perfect. They really are.
So let's do one final race because we are over time a little bit. District 7.
Oh my gosh.
Rick Jennings running against, let me check my notes here, against Rick Jennings. Congrats on the win.
What is going on, District 7? What the actual fuck? Like,
I mean, Shannon, this one's on you. Don't you live there?
Well, now I do. But I didn't until recently.
So listen.
Also, I'm not trying to run for office.
I'm just saying, if we can throw me on the hot seat every other episode, we can for sure. If you live there, I don't live in an odd number district, so y'all can go ahead and turn
I didn't live in this.
Okay?
I lived in District 5 before District 7. So
you live in an odd number district before coming and going.
I was against it. Yes.
So
all right, listen. Fine, whatever. I receive your ration of shit and I push it off of my platter to say that Rick Jennings, I cannot believe, what does this say about the pocket, like that Rick just continues to run unopposed, right? Like, this is a guy who's like,
He's likable.
He is likable. He doesn't ruffle feathers.
Incredibly charismatic, and he does not ruffle feathers, and he doesn't make a big stink.
Which is problematic, right? Like, it's problematic because you have someone who is like not actually advocating for the people who are suffering in his district, right? Instead, he's just like sitting cozy, and he does good. Like, Rick does good work outside of the council. He runs the Center for Fathers and Families, and does some incredible work for people in District 2. Like, what's happening?
Here's the thing. So Rick is head of Center for Fathers and Families. So when Prop 47, right, to decriminalize, low level offenses or make the Wobbler felonies just into misdemeanors came about, he didn't take a position on it. And I was just really confused. I'm like, you run the Center for Fathers and Families. So that to me is a story. I mean, granted, that was like 2014 or so. And so this is a while back, but like that to me is kind of like a very characteristic story of how Rick is doing the right thing in his day job, but then like not supporting the policy that would make, many of the clients that he's serving, make their lives even better. And that's kind of how I feel about his tenure on the council. It's just like, like you're doing some things, like I like when he stands up for the violence prevention programs and kind of sticks his neck out there and things like that. But it's like being the only Black representative on the council,
Right.
where is your strong and vocal leadership? Why is it that I could easily forget that you're on the council sometimes, and that I'm not seeing you take the lead on some of the issues that affect us most? I mean, like, you should be the loudest housing advocate because housing disproportionately impacts Black people, Black women, you know, like, and women of color, and you know, people who are low income, who are really struggling with affordable housing. So like the fact that you just roll over with the anti-renters rights, and you know, like, it really just doesn't make sense because you're running unopposed.
Yeah. I think, I mean, this is the guy who like sits on the dais and is like, you know, he's comfortable in that position. He's been there for long enough. It's like, yeah, I played football, and also I go to a church that hosted Winter Sanctuary for many years. And so these are like, so that's my social justice.
That's a lot of
and
social capital. Like, he played
It
for the
is.
Raiders. I like him immediately.
It
And
is,
it's- you
He
know,
played
like,
for the
also-
Niners. I don't
He's
like him
also
too much
incredibly
less.
charming. He's a
Yeah.
very nice man. Like,
and a very nice person. And that, I mean, and I think I can't say that enough because he is like in my life personally.
Right.
You know, he like, I went to college with his daughter. And so Rick is like family to me. So, and I say this all the time to say, like, I think that there's policy and who's doing a good job, and there's, do I like you, right? And there are a lot of candidates on this ballot that I like as people, but when it comes to, are you the right person for this job? I have questions. And I have a right, you know, I think some righteous indignation about the things that have or have not been done. So, you know, for those out there who are like, oh, it's personal, it's whatever, Rick is family to me. And I am sitting here saying, this is a disappointment. So that's the kind of radical honesty I require in my life if you want to be in my life.
I love it.
I'm, you know, I'm excited to live in District 7 now, so I can send Rick some emails, and I, you know, send him a few text messages about
You
how
should. I've got some questions on that water tower.
I feel about you. We got Rick. You know what? It's gonna be great to have you on the dais.
We went too long because our last
over
two
time.
topics were just too much fun.
Yeah.
But that's that for your June guide of, you know, you might walk away more confused than you started. So are we. You're not alone.
That means we did our job.
But thanks for listening. I hope it did clear up a few things for you folks. And I guess we'll see you next week.
Shit, yeah, we will.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.